Welcome to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. This podcast was created for the boomer woman leaving corporate, and now you're looking to reinvent yourself, become an author, an entrepreneur, a podcaster. Well, each episode will leave you with clarity. You will come away with the yes, I can and yes, I will reinvent myself mindset. So come on, let's do this. I'm your host, Margot Levette. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. Another episode, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Today's guest is a two-time international best-selling author. She's been featured on BBC Radio, The Wall Street Journal, NBC. This lady is a podcaster also, and she empowers leaders to work smart and think strategically. It is my pleasure to welcome Gina Gardiner from across the pond, everybody.
Hello there, and thank you very much for having me on your show. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, your energy and your synergy, we had a conversation and you just lit me up because what you do is give everybody's power back to themselves. So I know that I want to get into that, but your story, Gina, when you hear Gina's story, how she came to this day and claimed her power after so many catastrophes, I want to take a moment and will you just go ahead and tell us about take us all the way back to the accident and recovery and coming back to the school. And I won't shed any more light. I'll let you just turn up the sun and tell us about how you came into this thing of power.
Thank you. I was appointed to be the deputy principal of a large school very early. I was 28 at the time, and initially told not to apply because they wanted to appoint a man. In those days, you could get away with that. But I applied anyway, and I was appointed to be the catalyst for change. So we spent a few months working on strategically planning, and it got to the February half term in the UK that we have a week in February, and I was off skiing. I was a keen skier, and I had a new pair of skis for Christmas. And in those days, the style was to have skis as long as possible. Well, I spent the first few days of the ski holiday wrapping the end of the skis around the neck and kept on falling. And on the Thursday, I had a really bad fall and I split my ski suit. Anyway, I told the people I was skiing with on the last day, which is the next day, I'm going to go and do some simple runs. I'm going to get my confidence back. I'll meet you for lunch, which I did. And they said, we found this fabulous new run, come with us. So off we went. We got on the ski lift, one of those where the chair lift, where you gradually go up from the bottom of the valley and you see all these little ants at the bottom as you go up. We got off at the top of the stair lift and off we went. I followed them. They turned the corner and they stopped, and I could tell that something was very, very dreadfully wrong. And what they'd done is they'd taken the wrong turning, and instead of being on this wonderful, long, relaxing run, we were at the top of the Schindlergratz, which is the most difficult black run in St. Anton. Now, I had skied black runs before, but this was a bit of a monster. For those who are listening who are familiar with skiing, they will know what a mogul is. And a mogul is where the weather has eroded the snow, that it's been frozen and melted and frozen and melted, and you end up with these bumps. Now, they can be 1 inch or 2 inches deep, but these were 6 foot tall. So in order to ski down, you had to be brave enough to turn on a mogul and slip down, and then go along, turn on a mogul and slip down. And I left it too long, and I ended up in the powdered snow at the edge of the piste. And it took me about 20 minutes to ski down to where the others were all sitting on a mogul, rather like an elf on a mushroom, having a bindings check, or I'm afraid they all smoked. I never have, but so I went and I sat on my mogul, took my skis off. It was a very, very hot day, and suddenly I found I was falling. The top of the mogul had melted,
Oh my.
There was nowhere to land. So I remember hearing a scream and everything going black. When I came to, it took the others a long time to ski down to me. I suppose one benefit is that actually I'd fallen quite a large proportion of the field. They say about 150 to 200 feet. So there wasn't that much left to ski down. And I refused getting for them to call for the blood wagon. I managed to ski down to the hotel. We travelled back the next day, went straight to accident and emergency, where I was found to have concussion and I'd tweaked a nerve in my neck. 6 weeks later, I went skiing with the borough. I was a deputy leader. We had 150 odd children, and we were skiing in Switzerland. And I'd been given permission to go. We had a doctor who went with us. But as the week went on, I became more and more like Quasimodo. And on the last day, as the children finished all of their races at the end of the last day, I said to my colleagues, I've just got to go and lie down. And so I made my way up onto the top bunk. I don't quite know how. It wasn't a posh hotel we were staying in. And I suddenly found that I was paralysed down one side. I didn't want to shout out and frighten the children, and so I had to wait until somebody came. And that time seemed interminable. As soon as they did arrive, all hell broke loose and I was taken off to hospital, and I was there for several days before being flown home. Now, I got back to school by the May, really, and I was doing school and sleeping. That's all I could manage. So when I got to the school holidays, I was really relieved, and I thought, we have 6 weeks in the summer in England. I thought, now I can rest and recuperate. Just a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call very, very early in the morning from my principal's wife to say that she had found him dead in bed. And so suddenly I was the head of the school. And so far from having a restful holiday, I had to let all of the parents, all of the teachers, all of the authority know. And I was the head or principal. I was appointed permanently in the following January, and I was the head of the school for over 20 years. Now, my mobility continued to deteriorate. I could walk, but I had problems with fatigue and pain. And so in 1987, I had to start using a wheelchair around the school, but I didn't use it in the classrooms or in the office or the hall. And every time they did some investigations to see what was going on, the body fell apart. So I decided to keep away from doctors until 1996, when I was out in the garden and I sneezed and something pinged in my back. And it turned out that I had damaged a disc. The disc had burst. They removed the disc, but I had a failed back surgery syndrome, and I couldn't put my left foot to the floor without fainting. I was back at school pretty quickly, and I worked on my mobility, and within 18 months I could walk to the bottom of my very small garden. 3 months later I was sick, and I'd ruptured another disc, again failed back surgery, and I was completely wheelchair bound. Now, there was a whole range of things, really, in the sense that the gift of my disability was I had to find a way of empowering my staff to understand, in the context of the school, what does excellence look like. That we were very successful, and that the whole program that I put in place to develop people, to help them step into their power, to take responsibility, radical responsibility for their own performance and shared responsibility for everybody else, was very successful. And the school was on the best schools in England twice during my tenure as principal there, and I'm very proud of that.
Oh yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. But as time went on, my health was deteriorating. I was working a 15-hour day, 5.5 days a week, not only doing school, but I was working for the National College of Leadership, the government, because our budget was so bad. Not all at once, but it always had at least one role going on in order to bring the budget back to the school. But I recognized, that when I came out of hospital the second time, I was incredibly limited. If somebody hadn't left a cup down, filled a kettle, I couldn't make myself a drink. And so within 4 days of coming back from hospital, I was back in school. Because for me, the choice was I could focus on what I couldn't do, stay at home, watch daytime TV, not my thing, or I could go into school, my mouth patently worked, my hands, my brain, I could run my school very effectively. And if I needed something lifting down, or I needed somebody to actually do something physical for me, then that could happen. And so for me, the whole process of looking for the gift, the gift of the leadership program and approach, the gift of if you look at what you can do rather than what you can, has been the bedrock of my work since. When I left headship, I thought, well, what do I do now? So I took myself off to do a research project across industries, because my belief was that what the issues facing us in schools, and I employed 100 people, were the same as any organisation. How do you make people coming in from the world of education professional grown-ups quickly? How do you grow leaders through emerging leaders, middle leaders, and so on, particularly as in school we had such a poor budget. And so within the research project, I went to insurance, finance, manufacturing, retail, health, local government, a load of different industries. And of course, what I found was that the issues facing them were exactly the issues facing us in education. I wrote a couple of books to become my calling card, to give me credibility. And to start with, I worked mainly with corporates doing training and coaching. But the recession meant that that work completely dried up, all within a week. By that time, I was already working with organisations, helping them develop their people. That was work I'd got through lecturing at Essex University. And I've always done life coaching with individuals and couples. Mm. And so I started to work strategically with businesses, always with the decision makers, looking at how do you get the best out of your people, and how can you do that with integrity? How can you do that from a place where you want them to develop their potential, to take responsibility for their actions? And so for the last 10 years, that's what I've been doing. But there was a growing sense that there was more for me to do. Mm-hmm. When I'd been ahead and I'd got, all of the children and the parents, and we worked with hundreds of schools through the Beacon project, because we were one of the first Beacon schools because we were so successful. And although I was making a difference for the people I worked with, there was a sense that this was not enough. I'd become more and more aware of how many people were unhappy, stressed, anxious, depressed, lonely. And also very concerned about the quality of leadership. And I went into organisations that people were leading through fear, through lack. And so I started up a new business to run alongside my existing business called Genuinely You. And the whole purpose of that is to help people to step into being genuinely who they are. Wow. We are incredible beings. Each of us is unique. We are creative, and we have skills and enthusiasms and knowledge, and just being us is enough. Yes. When you start to recognize your own worth. And so for me, everything starts with you. So although I have an empowered leadership program, which it's just about to be launched, it starts with the individual. You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. For me, something's got to change. Mm-hmm. So I have a mission. My mission is to positively impact on 1 million people in the next 5 years by helping people step into a leadership based on integrity, compassion, and care, rather than fear and lack and separateness. Wow. Because we are all so connected. And I believe it's in that we will find that we have a future as individuals, families, communities, organisations, and the world in general. Because if not, we're just going to tear each other apart.
That's what's happening now. That's happening. I'm listening. Your story I see how it leads to power and strength and leadership. It all began with you, your mindset, with how you decided, I'm going to live the rest of my days out as this type of leader with this type of movement. And I love what you said about leadership, because so many of us we were up under leaders and we followed them out of fear, necessity. And at the end of the day, they were fearful because they really didn't know what they were doing. They weren't sure. They didn't have confidence. They questioned their amount of power. So we do need an overhaul on this thing of leadership and what works. Because, Gina, do you think the way we approached people 20 years ago, there's no way we can approach boomers, even millennials, the way we did 20 years ago, even 10 years ago?
If you look back, the vast majority of leadership was based on a paternalistic model. Now, whether that was a woman or a man at the top, in a sense, didn't matter. Maternalistic, paternalistic. It was, I am the font of all knowledge. I am the one who will direct you and tell you what to do. And I think the reason my organisation, and now the organisations I've worked with, which incidentally are more productive and more profitable, having worked with me and used these principles, that they also have better working relationships, less absenteeism, and better work-life balance for everyone. Why? Because if you look at the untapped resource that many organisations are quite just wasting because they're not engaging those people in the process, then it becomes, the style of leadership is either I'm going to bully and threaten, and if you don't do what I want, when I want it, you'll be out on your ear, or it's based on, well, I'll have an illusion of being the leader, but actually I use the it's better to do it yourself because at least then you know it's done properly style of leadership. And so you have leaders who are stressed and run ragged trying to do it all. Meanwhile, they're not growing the potential of their teams. That's wasted. And those people, because they don't feel valued, because they're not stretched to be in solution mode, to take some responsibility, they're then anxious, depressed. And one of the biggest reasons for depression, is my belief, is that people don't feel that what they're doing is valued.
Yes.
But we can't all be doing highly entertaining and jobs that we love doing every minute of every day. I love what I do, but there's still a lot of routine stuff that has to be done. But the way in which it's approached, the way in which you get people to understand why it's important and that their contribution is important makes all the difference in terms of people's motivation and their physical and mental health.
That is so true. So very, very true. The way you receive your job, it's from your mind all the way down to your feet. Everything is affected. We spend so many hours on a job for one thing. I think just looking back until it all does work together.
I believe you've got to be wholehearted. If you do, whether it's the washing up or cleaning the yard or taking the rubbish out, you can choose to do it in a half-hearted way, a resentful way, a way that you're not being the best version of you. Or you can do it in a way which is, actually I'm going to get some satisfaction from the fact that it's done and I'm going to do it well. I'm going to do it with good heart, with, in a positive way, rather than moaning about it and, because ultimately that has an impact on us.
It does. And the way people perceive what you do anyway. I mean, you can tell when things are done out of concern, care, love, it's genuine. It just kind of overflows, or if something's just kind of slopped together, which a lot of employees end up doing because they're really not living out their potential, their best selves. And, the companies just don't benefit from that at all. Which takes me over to one of your books.
Yes.
Let's talk about thriving, not surviving. Because at the top, before we even started recording, it came to me, so many of us are really thriving, but we're still in that beggarly survival mode. What is that all about, Gina? How do we break out of that?
I think there's a number of layers to this. Our beliefs actually give us our reality. So if we believe that our self-worth is connected to our bank balance or the house we have or the clothes we wear and that they've got to all be designer or the car we drive, then it's never going to be enough. Who is it? I've forgotten the name of the author, but he talks about junk values, values where our beliefs are tied to measuring our worth to external things. And I think that's one of the big problems, because with that, the sense of empowerment that going to buy something gives us is momentary. It's a false illusion.
Yes.
I think many people have a problem with confidence and self-worth. They don't like themselves. They don't love who they are. And I think that has to be the starting point. Each person is enough. And the relationships we have with others is a direct relationship, a direct reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. So if you don't like yourself, the chances are you will not put boundaries in place and people will walk all over you, for example. I also think that one of the issues around the barely surviving is, one of the things about us as human beings is we are designed to be connected. Mm-hmm. We are designed to live within close-knit groups where people care about us, where we care about them, where we are seen and heard. It's one of the reasons why I started the Thrive Together tribe, which is a membership group, because there's so many people, even in relationships, even in families, who feel alone, who don't feel seen and heard and valued. Mm-hmm. So it's important that starts with the individual, but also you need a supporting group who believe in you when you're having a wobble. Yeah. People who can encourage you and sometimes kick your butt and say, you know what, you're better than this. Mm-hmm. Get your finger out and stop faffing about, because you are better than this. So having belief in yourself, but having people who believe in you, being connected. And I think if that comes from a place of love, and I think lots of people, when you talk about love, think it's pink and fluffy. But if you love somebody unconditionally, whether that's yourself or others, you are going to want the best for them. So you will feed yourself well. You will look after yourself. You will have high standards for yourself. It's not about letting people off the hook. Quite the contrary. It is, if you truly love who you are, then you are going to want the very best version of you. And that means you've got to put the work in.
Yes, yes.
And I think so many people expect things to happen. I go on a course, but nothing's changed. Well, actually, the course doesn't change you. It can give you an opportunity, but you've got to put in the work yourself. And I think that for everybody, when they finally recognize that the thriving is not in material things, it is in doing the inner work. It is in having those connections with people and ultimately finding your purpose and doing something for others, that I think true thriving comes.
I think you have defined thriving in the most wonderful way. So we all should strive to thrive. It's so rich. It's such an awesome place to be, that place of thriving. How you stepped into your power, how you led your team, how you lead your team, how you perceive life and cause those of us around you to perceive life. I think it's absolutely commendable. I can't say enough about you. It's no wonder that in 2018 you were awarded the Best in Self-Help from the Book Talk and Radio Club. I'm not surprised. So we could go on and on and on with this conversation. You're just going to have to come back, because I feel as though we have just really scratch the surface of how we receive our power. It seems like there's so many different ways, so many different components and things that we need to check and take care of and tweak. And it begins in our minds, our mindset, which is exactly where it started with you. You have debilitating pain and mobility to overcome. And you don't let that stop you. You didn't let that stop you. I don't want people to forget your story. It's so incredible. We could have a pity party, have the violin, excuse me, have the violin. I'm getting all passionate about this. Have the violin out, or we can decide to do what Gina has done. Take our power back, become the leaders that we are supposed to be so that we can lead others. If you weren't so strong, if you weren't the leader that you are, you wouldn't be able to tell us about how we make our next steps, how we lead others. So I commend you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I applaud you.
Disability is a great metaphor for life. My disability means that I get into my electric wheelchair. I can walk short distances now. I've had a spinal stimulator fitted, so I don't use the wheelchair in the house and the garden. But if I go out, then I need to still use it. But my disability, I can get in my wheelchair and I can whiz off. I only ever have it on full speed, incidentally. But if you have a limiting belief about yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm too young, too old, too fat, too tall, not well educated enough, I can't, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Believe you can and you're halfway there.
Yes.
So if the people who are listening to this, one of the things I would say to you is don't underestimate what you can do. And if I may just tell a very short story,
yes,
a personal one, pivotal one for me, which I think may help the people who are listening or watching this. I am an NLP master practitioner, and I'd done all of my training with one organisation. Brilliant, I have to say. But I then went to look as many people who were doing NLP. And I ended up going to see Tony Robbins, and I was at the Excel Centre in London. And when I arrived there were 10,000 people on the course. That in itself was amazing. They did the fire walk on the first day. That's when you walk over hot coals in your bare feet without getting burnt. It's all about mindset. Now, in the morning, he talked about a course he was doing in California, Date with Destiny. And I thought, well, I'd really like to do that. But no, I couldn't possibly. I'd have to get to California on my own. At that time, I didn't have an electric travel chair. How would I manage? And I dismissed it. So I got to the firewalk and two people helped me by holding my arms both sides. And I was absolutely thrilled to have got to the other side. Sat down in my wheelchair, and the guy behind me was a double amputee who tipped onto his hands and walked over those hot coals on his hands. And I thought then, if he can do that, I am not going to self-limit. I went and booked my ticket and I booked my flight. I went off and I had a fabulous time. And since then, I've done all his stuff and I've been all over the place, either studying or going to talk and do, to run my own stuff. But I'm forever grateful to that guy. I have no idea who he was, but he not only was pivotal in terms of my perception about what I could do, but I've shared this story with lots of people who have said it's made a difference to them too. So I would say to your listeners, it's time to step into your power, to be genuinely who you are, not to self-limit, because anything that you believe is possible is going to be far more possible than if you believe it isn't.
I couldn't have said it better. Duly noted. It's no wonder that you are a successful businesswoman helping others. I listened to a couple of episodes there in your podcast. Excellent podcast. And what can I say? I always tell people, listen not one time, but several times to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. And so concerning Gina Gardiner, they're definitely going to have to listen more than one time, because even sitting here thinking, even if I didn't have a disability, then I would still need the confidence and the inner working. I need that landscape worked upon, that work that you've done and the work that you do. I may need to make sure that I pay attention to that. I need to make sure that I do self-care.
The disabilities that could be seen as a red herring in a sense, because we all have disabilities in the sense that we don't believe in ourselves. For me, I'd like to think that I would have done what I did anyway. I am honest enough to know that if I was going to do it, it would have taken me longer. But necessity is the mother of invention, and I had to find a way of empowering my school, my pupils, my teachers, and so on. But what I would say to anyone listening, forget what other people are doing. This is about you and the quality of your life. You owe it to you to give yourself the best opportunity to live your life fully. No half-hearted. Life's not a spectator sport. You need to get in there. And if you're fearful of failing, then the chances are you won't start. Just as many people are fearful of succeeding. And I think for anybody listening, it is time to step up and recognize that you are the arbiter of your own life. You're the common denominator. You take yourself into every moment of every day. So doesn't it make sense to make that a positive approach to life rather than a negative?
Yes, makes a lot of sense. All the sense in the world. Wow, Gina Gardiner, thank you so very much. You have stripped away all excuses that anybody would have concerning not owning their power. Wherever we are, in whatsoever state we are in, we have to take that power back. So thank you. Audience, gosh, Gina, what do you have coming up as far as, do you have any workshops, anything that, webinars that people can be a part of? What about your membership group?
Right. If people want to go onto the website, it's genuinely-you.com. There's lots of resources there. They can take the 7-day happiness challenge. The Thrive Together Tribe is a membership group. They'll find about that on the website. The leadership program, if you are in a place of leadership, if you want to lead with integrity, heart, and confidence, then why not go on the website, private message me. It's not yet being marketed. It's about to go live in the next couple of weeks. But if people are interested in becoming the leaders of the future, people who are going to change things to become the spiritual leaders of a great future, then private message me through the website. You can get a free digital download of Thriving Not Surviving from the website. It's all there. The other thing I'd ask your listeners to do is, I'm trying to build up my YouTube thing. Please go and subscribe to Genuinely You on the YouTube. But take some action. Go on to genuinely-you.com and you'll find lots of stuff there.
Well, you've been very generous, and I'm going to make sure that everybody and their brother, even after this is aired and downloaded, podcasts are evergreen. So from time to time, I'll just remind everybody this resource is available, because I don't care who you are. There's times when our confidence is not where it should be, and we slip back in old habits and old mindsets. So we need access to you and to your resources. So let me thank you again. Audience, thank you for taking the time to listen, for spending this time with Gina and myself. Enjoy the conversation. Take action. Those are the operative words. And go to my website. My book is there, and it's a brand new website. By the time this airs, her business, margolevette.com, should be built and ready. I have a couple surprises set for people over there, so you can purchase my book. Go over there and you get a couple of freebies for me. I want everybody to understand what the power of podcasting is all about. So I will be back next week with a brand new episode, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. In the meantime, I'm going to say bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Bye-bye now.
I want to thank you for listening to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Couple of things that I want you to do right now. Go to my website, pick up a copy of Her Business, Her Voice, Her Reinvention, how I went from game show hopping to international show host, author, and speaker in 1 year. Number 2, please freely listen to each and every episode. Share them out with your family, friends, the men in your lives. And then number 3, get in contact with me, one of the experts that have been on the show, because I want to make sure that you reinvent yourself. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode here on Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation.